My mother texted me the morning of my wedding to ask if the venue had good lighting for photos. Not my photos, Brittany's. She wanted to know if the ballroom would look nice in the pictures my sister was about to post from a resort in Bali, 6,000 miles away from the church where I was getting married in 4 hours. I read that text 3 times standing in my childhood bedroom, still in my robe, my dress hanging on the closet door like it was waiting for someone to actually wear it into that ballroom with 2 empty chairs in the front row. Those chairs had my parents' names on little gold cards. I'd ordered the cards myself back in March, back when I still believed they'd fly home for this. My name is Emily Caraway. I'm 31 years old, and by the time I was getting my hair pinned up that morning, I already knew my parents weren't coming. I just hadn't said it out loud yet. Not even to myself. "They'll make it," my Aunt Rosalind kept saying, fussing with a curl near my ear. "Traffic from the airport, that's all." There was no flight. There hadn't been one booked in weeks. I knew because I was the one who checked the shared family calendar the night before, hoping to see a confirmation number, and instead found a new entry my mother had added just that afternoon. Brittany, graduation celebration, Bali, 10 days. Brittany had graduated from her online business certificate program 3 months earlier. This was apparently the celebration. My wedding was apparently the schedule conflict. I didn't cry. I want to say I did, because that's what people expect. But mostly I just felt my chest go strangely quiet, like a room after someone slams a door and leaves. My father called at 11 that morning. I let it ring twice before I picked up. "Sweetheart, listen," he started, already sounding like a man rehearsing an excuse in a hotel bathroom. "Your mother and I talked about it, and Brittany really needed us this time. You understand, don't you? You've got Daniel now. You've got a whole new family starting today. Brittany's still figuring things out." Brittany is 26. She has been figuring things out since she was 19. Funded the entire time by parents who somehow never had enough left over for my community college tuition, my first apartment deposit, or, apparently, my wedding. "I understand," I told him, and I hung up before he could hear that my voice wasn't steady. I understood more than he knew. 3 weeks before the wedding, I'd gone through a box of my late grandmother's papers that my mother had finally handed over after 2 years of asking. Grandma Iris raised me for most of my childhood while my parents chased jobs in 3 different states, and when she passed, she left something behind for both her granddaughters. I knew that much. What I didn't know, until I sat on my apartment floor with Daniel beside me, going through faded bank statements and a copy of a trust document, was that the inheritance had been split unevenly from the very beginning, and not in the way anyone ever told me. Grandma Iris left $40,000 in trust for each of us, to be released when we turned 25. My statement showed a balance of $612. Brittany's showed nothing left at all, and a string of withdrawals going back 6 years, a car, a business investment that folded within a year, 2 trips to Cabo, and a down payment on an apartment she'd since left. All authorized by my parents as co-trustees. All, according to the trust language, requiring the account holder's own signature for anything over $5,000. I didn't have a signature like that on file for a single withdrawal from my own account. Someone else had been managing mine too, and quietly draining it the same way. I hadn't confronted anyone yet. I'd told myself I would deal with it after the wedding, that I didn't want anger sitting at the front of my mind on the one day I wanted to remember for the right reasons. Then they didn't show up, and anger stopped feeling like something I could postpone. Daniel found me by the window 40 minutes before the ceremony, watching the parking lot the way you watch a door you already know isn't going to open. "You don't have to walk yourself in," he said quietly. Rosalind offered. "I know, but you're thinking about someone else." I was. I'd been thinking about a man named Walter Hendricks since the moment my father hung up on me. My grandmother's oldest friend, and, as it turned out from the papers I'd found, the original co-trustee on both accounts before my parents petitioned to have him removed 4 years ago. I hadn't spoken to him since I was a teenager. I found his number through my grandmother's old address book and called him 2 nights earlier, not entirely sure what I was asking for. "I'm getting married Saturday," I'd told him, "and I don't think my parents are coming. I don't really know why I'm calling you. I think I just wanted someone who knew her to be there." There was a long pause on the line. "Emily," he said, "there's something about that trust I've wanted to tell you for 4 years, and nobody would give me your number." He didn't explain further. He just asked what time the ceremony started. The music began. Rosalind squeezed my hand at the back of the aisle, ready to walk me in herself, and that was when the side door near the altar opened, and Walter Hendricks stepped through it instead, 71 years old, in a gray suit that looked older than I was, carrying a slim leather folder under one arm, like it was something he didn't trust himself to set down. He didn't come to walk me down the aisle. He came to stand where my father should have been standing, at the front, beside the officiant, and for one confused second, I thought I'd misjudged the whole thing, until he looked at me and gave a small nod, like he was telling me, "Go ahead, I've got this part." I walked myself down the aisle. My cousin filmed it on her phone, and later I'd watch that video and notice that I wasn't looking at Daniel for most of it. I was looking at Walter, waiting to understand why a man I hadn't spoken to in over a decade was the one standing there instead of my parents. He waited until the vows were finished, until Daniel and I were declared married, until the applause had mostly settled, and only then did he ask the officiant, with a courtesy that somehow made it worse, if he could say a few words. "I'm not here to make today about anything but Emily and Daniel," he said, and his voice carried more than I expected from a man his age. "But I promised Iris Caraway a long time ago that if certain things ever happened, I wouldn't stay quiet. Emily, your grandmother set aside money for you and your sister so neither of you would ever have to depend on anyone else's mood to build a life. I was removed as trustee 4 years ago because I kept asking questions about withdrawals I hadn't approved. I have those records with me. I think it's time you saw them, and I think it's long past time your parents explained them to you themselves." The room went the particular kind of quiet that isn't peaceful. My mother's cousin, sitting near the back, actually stood up like she meant to intervene, then sat back down when she realized there was no one to intervene against. I took the folder. My hands weren't shaking, which surprised me. I think some part of me had already made peace with what I'd find inside, the same way you make peace with weather you can already feel coming. I didn't open it there. I slid it into my bag and finished my own wedding, because I decided somewhere in that silence that Brittany's vacation had already taken 1 day from me, and I wasn't giving away a second. I opened it that night, after the reception, sitting on the edge of a hotel bed, still in my dress with the zipper half undone, Daniel reading over my shoulder. The withdrawals matched what I'd already found in my grandmother's box, but Walter's copies went further, bank transfer confirmations with my father's signature, and a handwritten note from my mother to the bank, dated 2 years after Grandma Iris died, requesting that Emily's account statements be sent to their address instead of mine, for simplicity, as she is currently unreachable while relocating. I had never relocated. I had lived at the same address for 6 years. They'd been reading my mail, managing my inheritance like it was theirs to manage, moving pieces of it, not all of it, but pieces, toward Brittany's accounts under the label family support to be repaid. Nothing had ever been repaid. "You don't have to do anything with this tonight," Daniel said. He was right. I didn't. But I called my father anyway. He answered on the 4th ring, background noise of a hotel bar behind him, ice clinking against glass. "Emmy? Hey, we saw the pictures Rosalind sent. The venue looked beautiful." "Walter Hendricks was at my wedding today," I said. The silence that followed lasted long enough that I heard him set the glass down. "I have his copies," I said. "The transfer confirmations, the letter Mom sent the bank about my statements. I know you moved some of my trust into Brittany's accounts for 6 years and never told me there was anything left to move." "It wasn't like that," he said too fast. We always meant to make it even. Your sister needed... I needed a father at my wedding, I said. You decided what I needed wasn't as important as what she wanted. He didn't have an answer for that. I hung up before the silence could turn into another excuse. The weeks after the wedding weren't dramatic in the way people expect. There was no screaming match, no dramatic courtroom scene. I did what Walter quietly suggested. I hired a trust attorney of my own, a calm, unhurried woman named Priya, who looked at the documents and told me exactly what my options were, without ever once telling me what to feel about them. My parents didn't fight the claim. I think some part of them had been waiting 4 years for someone to finally make them stop. They agreed, through Priya and their own lawyer, to restore what remained of my portion with interest, structured over 3 years, along with a written accounting of every withdrawal, so nothing could quietly disappear again. Brittany found out everything 2 weeks later, not from me, but from our mother, in a phone call I wasn't part of. She showed up at my apartment that weekend, uninvited, red-eyed, and for once, not asking me for anything. I didn't know it was your money, she said, standing in my doorway like she wasn't sure she was allowed inside. I thought it was theirs to give me. I never once thought about where it was actually coming from. I believed her mostly. Brittany had been handed things her whole life without ever having to ask where they came from, and I don't think that makes a person evil. It makes them someone who never had to grow up because nobody made her. I'm not asking you to pay me back, I told her. I just needed you to know. She nodded, and for the first time in years, she didn't turn the conversation back to herself. My parents came to dinner at my place 3 months later, the first time since the wedding. My mother brought a candle as a gift, the kind of small offering people bring when they don't know how to bring the thing that's actually needed. My father sat at my table and, without me asking, said he was sorry, not for missing the wedding at first, but for something bigger, for years of quietly deciding my needs could wait. I don't expect you to forgive it today, he said. I just needed you to hear me say it. I didn't forgive it that day. I'm not sure forgiveness works on a schedule anyway. But I let him say it, and I noticed, for the first time in a long while, that I wasn't bracing for the next disappointment while he spoke. That felt like enough of a start. Walter came to that same dinner, at my invitation. He brought a photograph I'd never seen, my grandmother at maybe 40, laughing at something out of frame, the trust papers she'd eventually write nowhere near finished yet. She always said you were the one who asked the right questions, he told me, setting the photo on my counter. I just finally had the chance to answer one. I keep that photograph on my kitchen shelf now, next to a wedding picture Daniel took himself, the one where I'm walking down the aisle alone, and somehow not looking like someone who was left behind, but like someone who was, for the first time, walking toward the life she'd actually chosen. My parents didn't choose that day for me, but I've stopped needing them to. Some doors you learn to walk through yourself, and it turns out the room on the other side can still be exactly where you belong.